Job hunting on the road, a single father gets a ride from a billionaire. His life changes. The Mercedes convertible hummed along State Route 87, cutting through the Arizona desert like a blue blade through amber waves. Celeste Davenport had the top down, blonde hair whipping in the hot wind, designer sunglasses shielding her blue eyes from the relentless June sun. The leather seat beneath her royal blue blazer was warm, almost too warm, but she didn't care. This drive, alone without assistance or security or board members breathing down her neck, was the only freedom she had left. At 24, she ran the youngest luxury hotel empire in the Southwest. The Melbrook chain had 15 properties across 5 states, each one a monument to her late father's vision. Gerald Davenport had built everything from nothing, arriving in Phoenix 30 years ago with empty pockets and dreams bigger than the desert sky. He'd shared the story 100 times, arriving with holes in his shoes and $73, sleeping in bus stations, washing dishes for meals, saving every penny until he could buy a rundown motel on the outskirts of Flagstaff. That motel, the Desert Rose, had 10 rooms, a cracked pool, and a neon sign that barely worked. But Gerald Davenport saw potential where others saw failure, working 18-hour days, teaching himself plumbing and electrical work, painting every room personally, greeting every guest with genuine warmth. Within 5 years, the Desert Rose was booked solid year-round. Within 10, he'd bought 2 more properties. Within 20, he'd built an empire. Then at 62, his heart simply stopped. One moment reviewing architectural plans for the new Sedona location, the next he was gone. No warning, no goodbye, just an empty chair and an empire that suddenly belonged to his only daughter. 3 years dead. Celeste had inherited not just his fortune, but his legacy, his expectations, his impossible shadow. She pressed harder on the accelerator, speedometer climbing past 80, the desert blurred into streaks of gold and rust. She was supposed to be at the flagship Melbrook in Scottsdale right now, schmoozing potential investors from Dubai. Instead, claiming a migraine, she'd slipped out the back entrance of her Camelback Mountain mansion at dawn. The truth was simpler and more pathetic. She couldn't breathe in that house anymore. 12,000 square feet of emptiness, marble floors echoing with every footstep. A kitchen unused because eating alone at a dining table seating 16 felt like slow torture. A pool she avoided because floating in silence reminded her too much of drowning. Rooms unopened, meant for children never born, for a family that would never exist. Her divorce had been finalized 8 months ago. Marcus Wellington III, heir to a commercial real estate fortune, seemed perfect on paper. Harvard-educated, impeccable pedigree, a portfolio that made financial advisors weep with joy. Their wedding made every society page from Phoenix to New York. The ceremony alone cost more than most people earned in a year. Ice sculptures, imported flowers, a dress requiring 6 months to design. Beautiful, perfect, completely hollow. Marcus wanted a wife to host dinner parties and shine at charity galas, produce an heir or two, organize fundraisers. What did she want? Even now she couldn't say. But not that. Not waking beside a stranger every morning. Not pretending to care about country club politics and yacht comparisons. Not the quiet, creeping realization that she'd married someone she didn't even like. The separation drew more publicity than the wedding. Tabloids called her cold, calculating, incapable of love. Marcus played the wounded victim perfectly, telling anyone who'd listened that hotels mattered more to her than marriage. He wasn't wrong, but he wasn't right either. The truth lived in the messy middle. She cared about neither hotels nor marriage, having lost the ability to care about anything at all. For 8 months, she'd gone through the motions. Board meetings, investor calls, property inspections, ribbon cuttings, smiling for cameras, shaking hands, making decisions affecting thousands of lives while her own felt like a treadmill set to an unsustainable speed. This morning, she'd woken at 4 a.m. in cold sweats, heart racing, unable to breathe. Her therapist would call it a panic attack. Celeste called it Tuesday, walking through her silent mansion in bare feet, past the inherited Picasso she'd never chosen, past the grand piano no one played, past the sitting room meant for guests never invited. In her father's old study, the one room unchanged after his death, she found herself staring at a photograph on his desk. Gerald Davenport, at 25, standing before the original Desert Rose Motel, thin, sun-worn, wearing faded jeans and a threadbare t-shirt, but the smile on his face blazed incandescent. Pure joy, pure pride. The expression of a man who'd built something with his own hands and knew exactly who he was. 20 minutes staring at that photo, trying to remember the last time anything had felt that real. coming up empty. So she'd grabbed the first clothes available, this royal blue blazer from last year's conference, forgotten denim shorts, impractical blue heels that somehow felt right, and run. Not from anything specific, just run. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, heat mirages dancing on the asphalt like liquid ghosts. Celeste reached for her water bottle, took a long drink of tepid water that did nothing to cool her, and that's when she saw him. A figure walking roadside. At first, just a dark shape against the bright landscape, wavering in heat distortion, like something from a dream. But closer details emerged. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing jeans and a white t-shirt soaked with sweat. Carrying a canvas duffel bag over one shoulder, the kind military guys used. Olive green and worn. Walking. In this heat. On this empty stretch between Phoenix and Payson, where the next town was 40 miles away and the temperature pushed 95 degrees. Where most people wouldn't exit their car even if it caught fire, because there was nowhere to go, nothing to see, just endless desert and unforgiving sun. Her foot eased off the gas instinctively. She should keep driving. People broke down on desert highways constantly. He probably had a phone, would call someone, would manage. This wasn't her problem. She had enough problems without taking on a stranger's troubles, but something about the way he walked froze her. Not defeated, not desperate, not stumbling or dragging his feet like someone at rope's end. Just determined. One foot ahead of the other, steady as a metronome, like he'd walk to California if necessary. Head up despite brutal sun, shoulders back, despite the bag's weight. There was dignity in that walk, quiet pride that made her chest tighten with unexpected emotion. Then it hit like a physical blow, stealing her breath, the memory of her father's voice late one night when she was 12, sitting in his study while he worked on hotel designs. When she'd asked how he'd gotten started, he set down his pencil and looked at her with those serious brown eyes that always made her feel whatever he said next would matter. You know how I got to Phoenix, Misha? Using the Spanish endearment learned from his own father, a man who'd crossed the border with nothing but hope. I walked. Crossed the state line from New Mexico on foot with everything I owned in an old army duffel bag just like my father's. Took me 3 days in August heat. Slept under overpasses. Ate gas station food when I had money. Nothing when I didn't. People drove past, hundreds of them in their nice air-conditioned cars, and only one paused. Only one person in 3 days saw me and thought I was worth helping. Who was it? Young Celeste had asked, leaning forward. Old man named Joe Martinez. Drove a beat-up Ford pickup, worked construction. He pulled over on Highway 60 just outside Globe, asked where I was headed. When I said Phoenix, he answered, "Hell, son, that's where I'm going too. Hop in." Her father smiled at the memory, but it was sad, heavy with old grief. He didn't just offer a ride. He bought me a meal at a truck stop, refused payment, gave me the name of a cheap motel, a phone number for possible dishwashing work, treated me like I mattered, like I was worth helping. What happened to him? Celeste had asked. Her father looked up from his desk, eyes distant and full of regret. Died 2 years later. Heart attack. By then I'd saved enough to buy the Desert Rose, was just getting started. I went to his funeral, tried to thank his widow, tried to explain how much that ride had meant, but she was drowning in medical bills, funeral costs, and I was barely scraping by myself. I couldn't help her, couldn't repay the debt. He'd paused, reaching across the desk to take young Celeste's hand. I promised myself that day I'd never forget what it felt like to walk that highway alone. Never forget that one person's kindness can change everything. I promised Joe Martinez, even though he couldn't hear me, that I'd be that person for someone else someday, that I'd pull over when others drove by, that I'd remember. Celeste had been too young to fully grasp the weight of that promise, but she'd never forgotten the look in her father's eyes. And now, 24 and feeling ancient, she stared at a man walking that same highway her father had walked, carrying the same kind of bag, moving with the same determination. The Mercedes rolled onto the shoulder, tires crunching gravel, dust plumes rising in the desert wind like smoke signals. Celeste's hands trembled slightly as she removed her sunglasses, heart hammering against her ribs. This was crazy. She didn't know this man, didn't know his story. He could be dangerous, could be running from the law, could be 100 different kinds of bad news. But he was walking, and her father had walked, and only one person had paused. The man halted too, standing about 30 feet away, wary but not afraid, his weathered face impossible to read beneath a worn baseball cap, late 20s, maybe 30, white t-shirt indeed soaked with sweat, clinging to a frame speaking of physical labor and lean living. Jeans dusty but intact, boots old but well-maintained. Everything about him suggested someone who'd hit hard times but hadn't surrendered on himself yet. Celeste leaned across the passenger seat, voice carrying across the empty space. "You need a ride?" The man didn't move immediately. His eyes, clear gray-blue like winter sky, assessed her carefully. The car, the situation, her, smart, cautious. Someone who'd learned the hard way not to trust easy offers. "Depends where you're headed," he finally said, voice deeper than expected with slight roughness suggesting emotion or dehydration. Probably both. A trace of Texas in his accent, soft vowels and drawn-out consonants from somewhere further south. North, Payson, maybe further. Celeste found herself gripping the steering wheel tighter, surprised by how much she wanted him to accept. "Could take you wherever you're going if it's on the way." He shifted the duffel from one shoulder to the other, considering. Up close, she could see exhaustion in the lines around his eyes, sunburn on his neck, how his hands were raw and calloused. This was a man who'd been walking for more than just today. "I'm looking to get to Flagstaff eventually," he said. "Heard they might be hiring at the hotels. Mountain resorts, ski lodges, that kind of thing. That's a long walk. You know that's over 100 miles? Something that might have been a smile tugged at his mouth's corner, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I've got time. You've also got 95-degree heat and no shade for the next 40 miles. Celeste heard the pleading note in her voice and didn't care. "Look, I don't know your story, and you don't know mine, but I'm offering a ride in good faith. No strings, no expectations. Just one person helping another because." She paused, swallowed hard. "Because someone helped my father once when he was in your shoes, and I think I'm supposed to pay that forward." For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Pride was written all over him, in his jaws set, the way he held himself even after God knows how many miles on foot. This was a man who didn't accept charity easily, who'd rather suffer than accept pity. But then something shifted in his expression, a tiny crack in the armor, and she realized he wasn't just proud, he was exhausted, bone deep, soul tired, exhausted, the kind that came from carrying more than just a physical bag. "I appreciate it," he said finally, moving toward the car with deliberate steps. "Name's Ryan Walker, Celeste Davenport." She popped the trunk. "You can put your bag back there." She watched him carefully place his duffel in the trunk, treating it like it contained something precious. His movements were slow, methodical, like someone conserving energy. When he closed the trunk, he paused, one hand resting on the car, and she saw his shoulders rise and fall with a deep breath. Relief? Gratitude? Maybe just the simple act of letting someone else carry the weight for a moment. When he slid into the passenger seat, she caught the scent of honest sweat mixed with cheap soap and laundry detergent, the kind from coin laundromats. Not unpleasant, real, more real than expensive colognes and forced air conditioning and sterile perfection of her usual world. "Thank you for pulling over," Ryan said as she merged back onto the highway, voice quiet but sincere. "Most people don't." "I know." Celeste checked her mirrors, accelerated smoothly back to highway speed. "I almost didn't." He glanced at her, curious, but didn't press. Instead, he rolled down the window slightly, letting wind rush in. His hands rested on his knees, work roughened and capable looking. There was a small scar across his right knuckles, white against tanned skin. A wedding ring had left a tan line on his left hand, but the ring itself was gone. Recently, by the looks of it. They drove in silence for several miles. It should have been awkward, picking up a stranger and not knowing what to say, but somehow it wasn't. The silence felt natural, even comfortable, like they were both people who'd spent too much time talking when they had nothing to say, and now that they had things worth saying, they were figuring out where to start. Celeste kept stealing glances at her passenger. He stared at the desert landscape with intensity, suggesting he was seeing it for the first time, or maybe seeing it in a way he never had before, like a man who'd been blind and could suddenly see again, or someone memorizing every detail because they knew how close they'd come to never seeing anything again. "So, what's in Flagstaff?" she asked finally, unable to bear the quiet longer. The question came out more abrupt than intended. Ryan didn't answer immediately. He watched a hawk circling in the distance, riding thermal updrafts over sun-baked rocks. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "Fresh start. I've got some hospitality experience. Thought maybe one of the ski resorts or hotels might need someone. I can clean, do maintenance, basic repairs. I'm good with my hands. I can fix just about anything mechanical. Plumbing, electrical, HVAC. Learned it all on the job over the years. Sounds like you'd be a valuable employee. How'd you learn all that? Necessity mostly. He smiled ruefully. When you can't afford to hire people, you learn to do things yourself. Started changing oil in my buddy's garage at 16. Moved on to motorcycles. Then cars. Then I got a job doing maintenance at an apartment complex in Tucson. Learned the rest there. Building maintenance, tenant relations, all of it. What happened? In Tucson? Another pause. Longer this time. She could see him choosing words carefully, trying to figure out how much truth to tell a stranger who'd picked him up off a desert highway. Place got sold, he said finally. New owners brought in their own people, laid off half the staff. I was one of them. Tried to find something else in the city, but he shrugged, the gesture conveying volumes of frustration and defeat. Turns out when you're over 25 without a college degree, people assume you're not worth investing in. Spent 3 months burning through savings, applying to everything. Construction, warehouses, retail, didn't matter, nothing came through. I'm sorry, don't be. Wasn't your fault. But there was no bitterness in his voice, just tired acceptance. Lost my apartment 2 weeks ago. Been crashing with friends, but you can only do that so long before you wear out your welcome. Figured it was time to try somewhere new. Somewhere the cost of living isn't quite so brutal. Somewhere I could maybe afford to actually live instead of just survive. Celeste thought about her 12,000 square foot mansion, about property taxes alone costing more than most people's annual salary, thought about wine in her cellar costing more per bottle than Ryan had probably spent on food in a month. The gulf between their lives was so vast it made her dizzy. Where are you staying tonight? She asked. Don't know yet. I'll figure something when I get to Payson. Maybe find a cheap motel. Maybe sleep in a park if the weather holds. He said it matter-of-factly, like sleeping rough was just another item on a to-do list. And after that, same thing. Walk some more tomorrow. Get a little further north, keep going until something works out. He turned to look at her directly. You don't need to worry about me. I've been taking care of myself for a long time. I'll be okay. But Celeste wasn't sure she believed that. She'd seen enough people at the edge to recognize the signs. Ryan Walker was holding on by his fingernails and he knew it. You mentioned family, she said, remembering what he'd said earlier. You've got family in Phoenix? For the first time, his expression truly softened. His whole face transformed. Years falling away. Weariness replaced by something gentler. Love, she realized. Pure, uncomplicated love. Got a daughter, he said, and the way he said it, with such tender pride, made Celeste's heart ache. Hannah, she's 7 years old. Smart as a whip. Asks questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? Where do stars come from? How do birds know how to fly? She never stops wanting to know things. She sounds wonderful. She is. She's the best thing I ever did. The only thing I've ever done that really mattered. He pulled out his phone, an older model, screen cracked but functional, and showed her a photo. A little blonde girl with a gap-toothed smile holding up a crayon drawing of what might have been a castle or possibly a rocket ship. She's beautiful, Celeste said, and meant it. Yeah. Ryan stared at the photo before putting the phone away. She's with my sister right now, in Phoenix. Sarah's got a spare room, works from home, can keep an eye on Hannah while I get things sorted. But I need to get sorted soon. Can't keep imposing on my sister forever, and Hannah needs her dad. Needs stability. What about her mother? Ryan's expression went carefully neutral. Left when Hannah was 2. Decided motherhood wasn't for her. Signed away her parental rights and moved to California with a guy she met online. Haven't heard from her in 5 years. Don't expect to. Jesus, I'm sorry. Don't be. Hannah's better off. Kid doesn't need someone in her life who doesn't want to be there. She's got me. She's got my sister. We make it work. He paused, then added with quiet intensity. She deserves better than what I can give her right now, though. Deserves her own room, not a floor mattress in her aunt's apartment. Deserves a dad with a steady job and a place to call home. Deserves to not worry about whether we'll have enough money for school supplies or birthday presents. The pain in his voice was raw and real. This wasn't self-pity. This was a father's anguish at not being able to provide for his child. You're doing the best you can, Celeste said quietly. That counts for something. Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, my best isn't good enough. Ryan scrubbed a hand over his face. Sorry, you don't need to hear all this. Here, you were just trying to do a good deed, not sign up for somebody else's problems. No, it's okay, I asked, and she had, because something about this man made her want to know his story, made her want to understand how someone ended up walking alone on a desert highway with everything they owned in a single bag. They passed a billboard advertising the Melbrook Hotel in Sedona. Luxury accommodations, world-class spa, fine dining. Celeste felt the familiar twist of guilt and resentment. "What about you?" Ryan asked, turning the tables. "You headed somewhere in particular or just driving?" "Just driving," Celeste admitted. "Needed to get out of the city for a while. Must be nice having that freedom." She almost laughed. Almost. The sound caught in her throat and came out as something between a scoff and a sob. Freedom. That's one word for it. Ryan studied her profile, reading something in her expression that made him go quiet. "You okay? Am I okay?" Celeste repeated the question like she'd never heard it before. Maybe because no one had asked her that in months. Years, maybe. Everyone always assumed she was okay. Why wouldn't she be? Money, power, success. What could possibly be wrong? "I'm 24 years old," she said, words spilling out before she could contain them. "I wake up every day in a house that cost more than most people will make in their entire lives. I run a company worth hundreds of millions. I have assistants and drivers and people whose entire job is making sure I'm comfortable. And I can't remember the last time I felt anything except—" She trailed off, searching for the word. "Empty?" Ryan supplied quietly. She looked at him sharply. "Yeah, empty." They drove in silence for another mile. Then Ryan said, "That car you're driving probably costs more than I've made in the last 5 years combined." "Probably. And your blazer," Ryan continued, "that's designer too, right? Gucci. Figures." But there was no resentment in his voice. "So I'll ask again. You somebody important?" Celeste took a deep breath. "I own hotels, 15 properties across the Southwest. The Melbrook chain." Ryan's eyes widened. "The fancy ones with the blue and gold signs? Those would be mine. Well, damn. And here I am hoping to clean toilets at one of your competitors." "Don't call me boss lady," Celeste said. "What should I call you?" "Just Celeste." "Okay, just Celeste. So what are you doing out here alone?" "Running away, I guess. From board meetings and people who only see me as my father's daughter. From a life that looks perfect and feels like drowning. Money doesn't fix everything, does it? It doesn't fix anything that matters." They passed a sign. Payson, 25 miles. The landscape was changing, flat desert giving way to rolling hills, hints of pine forest in the distance. "So here I am," Celeste continued, "drowning in success, choking on everything I thought I wanted. And I saw you walking on that highway with your head up and your shoulders back, and I thought—" She paused, searching for words. "I thought, there's someone who knows what it means to keep going, someone who hasn't given up even when they have every reason to. And I realized I'd forgotten how to do that." Ryan was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she'd told him. Then he said, "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you're being too hard on yourself. You're 24 years old, running a multi-million-dollar company, keeping 3,000 people employed, continuing your father's legacy. That's not nothing. That's not failure. It doesn't feel like success. Maybe because you're measuring success wrong." He turned to face her more fully. "You're comparing yourself to your father, but you're not your father. You're you. And maybe you need to figure out what success looks like for Celeste Davenport, not for Gerald Davenport's daughter." The simplicity of it hit her like a physical force. "How did you get so wise?" Ryan laughed, a real laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Trust me, I'm not wise. I'm a 28-year-old single dad sleeping on my sister's couch, walking down highways looking for work. If I was wise, I'd have made better choices along the way." "You're 28, not 30. 28 then. Point stands. I've made plenty of mistakes, lost jobs, lost relationships, lost my way more times than I can count." He paused. "But Hannah keeps me honest. Every time I start feeling sorry for myself, I think about her, about the way she looks at the world like it's full of possibilities. And I think I gotta be the kind of person who deserves that faith. I gotta be someone she can be proud of. She already is proud of you. I can hear it in the way you talk about her. Maybe. But I want to give her more than just a dad who loves her. I want to give her stability, security, a home where she doesn't have to worry about whether we can afford groceries or school supplies, a life where she can just be a kid." They were entering Payson now, the small mountain town spreading out before them. Restaurants, gas stations, local shops. Normal life, lived at a normal pace. So different from the frenetic energy of Scottsdale, the relentless drive for more, bigger, better. Celeste pulled into a diner parking lot and cut the engine. "I need to eat something. You hungry?" Ryan hesitated, and she could see him doing mental math, calculating how much money he had left, how long it needed to last. "I'm okay. I'm buying." And before you say no, consider it payment for being decent company and giving me things to think about. Celeste, please, Ryan, let me do this. Not as charity, as, she searched for the right word, as friends? Is that okay? Can we be friends? He studied her face for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Yeah, we can be friends. But next time I'm buying. Deal. Though I should warn you I have expensive taste. That got another smile from him. Figures. Inside the diner, they took a booth by the window. The place was classic Americana. Red vinyl seats worn smooth by decades of use. Black and white checkered floor, a jukebox in the corner playing Patsy Cline. The scent of coffee and bacon hung in the air, familiar and comforting. The kind of place Gerald Davenport probably would have loved. The kind of place he'd left behind in his climb to the top. A waitress with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun approached their table. Her name tag read Dolores, and she had the kind of face that had seen everything and judged nothing. What can I get you folks? Celeste watched Ryan study the menu carefully, eyes moving down the prices. His lips moved slightly as he calculated, and she saw him gravitate toward the cheapest items. It broke her heart a little. I'll have the mushroom Swiss burger and fries, she said decisively. And coffee, please. Ryan looked up from the menu. Same for me. Thanks. After Dolores walked away, Celeste said, You know you can order what you actually want, right? I meant it when I said I'm buying. I like mushroom Swiss burgers. You sure? Because I saw you looking at the prime rib. He laughed. Okay, you caught me. But seriously, a burger's fine. I'm not going to take advantage of your generosity. It wouldn't be taking advantage. It would be accepting a meal from a friend. Then I'm accepting a burger from a friend and appreciating it. He took a sip of water, then asked, So tell me, what's it really like running all those hotels? Celeste considered the question while Dolores brought their coffee. Honestly, most days exhausting. I've got property managers sending me reports, maintenance issues to approve, staffing problems to solve. There's always some crisis somewhere. A health inspection, a bad review going viral, guests threatening lawsuits over stupid things, employees calling out sick during our busiest seasons. It's like playing whack-a-mole with problems that never end. Sounds stressful. It is. But that's not even the hard part. The hard part is the loneliness. Munchie wrapped her hands around the warm coffee mug. I'm surrounded by people all day, every day. Assistants, managers, board members, investors. But none of them are actually with me, you know? They're all there for the business, for what I can do for them, what I can approve or deny or fund. Nobody asks how I'm actually doing. Well, I did. And you said you were empty. Yeah. Celeste took a sip of coffee, bitter and strong. I did say that. What would make you feel less empty? No one had ever asked her that question. She sat with it for a moment, really thinking. I think I'd want to do what my father did in the very beginning. When he bought that first motel, the Desert Rose. It was a dump. 10 rooms, half uninhabitable. Pool was more green than blue, but he saw potential. He fixed it up himself, worked 18-hour days, greeted every guest personally, made people feel welcome, like they mattered, like their vacation or business trip or whatever brought them there was important to him. She paused, remembering stories her father had told. He knew regulars by name, remembered that Mr. Chen liked extra towels, that the Johnsons always requested a room away from the elevator, that Mrs. Rodriguez was allergic to feather pillows. It wasn't about profit margins back then. It was about people. So do that now. It's not that simple. Why not? Ryan leaned forward, intense. You're the CEO. You've got power. Use it differently than you have been. Because I've got 15 properties and 3,000 employees. I can't personally greet every guest. I can't know everyone's preferences. The business got too big for that kind of personal touch. Maybe. But you could create a culture that values it. Train your staff to care about guests as people, not just credit card numbers. Reward employees who go above and beyond. Make it company policy to remember the little details. He shrugged. I'm just spitballing here. But seems like if you're in charge, you get to decide what matters. Celeste stared at him. It was so simple, so obvious. And yet no one, not her board, not her executives, not her high-priced consultants, had ever suggested it. They were all focused on occupancy rates and revenue per available room, on expanding into new markets and maximizing shareholder value. But Ryan, this man who'd lost everything and was walking toward an uncertain future, understood what she'd forgotten, that the business was supposed to be about people. You should be running my company, she said. He laughed. Pretty sure I'm not qualified. You're more qualified than half my executive team. They've got MBAs and decades of experience, but they've forgotten why we're in hospitality in the first place. To make people feel cared for, to create spaces where memories happen. You get that. Their burgers arrived and they ate in comfortable silence for a while. Celeste noticed Ryan eating slowly, deliberately, savoring each bite like someone who'd known real hunger and didn't take any meal for granted. He chewed thoughtfully, eyes half closed in appreciation of the simple pleasure of hot food. "This is really good," he said. "Or maybe everything tastes good when you're hungry." "When's the last time you ate? Really ate?" Ryan considered. "Yesterday morning, my sister made pancakes before I left Phoenix. That was over 24 hours ago. You walked all day on an empty stomach, had some water, and a granola bar around noon." "Jesus, Ryan. It's fine, I've gone longer before." He took another bite of burger. "You do what you have to do." Celeste flagged down Dolores. "Can we get a couple slices of apple pie to go? And another burger, also to go?" Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Planning ahead? Maybe you'll get hungry later, or tomorrow. Sue me for caring." When they'd finished eating, Celeste paid the bill over Ryan's protests. They walked back to the car carrying a bag with the extra food, late afternoon sun painting everything gold. "Thank you," Ryan said as they got back on the road. "For the meal, for listening, for not making me feel like a charity case." "You're not a charity case. You're someone who hit hard times and is doing something about it. That's not weakness. That's strength." They drove in thoughtful silence, miles falling away. Celeste's mind raced with possibilities. An idea had been forming since their conversation in the diner, growing more concrete with each passing mile. "I want to offer you something," she said finally as Scottsdale came into view, city lights beginning to glow in the gathering dusk. "What's that?" "A job. At the flagship Mel Brock in Scottsdale. We always need good maintenance people, and if you're as handy as you say, even better. I could start you in housekeeping, but there's real opportunity for advancement if you're willing to work hard." Ryan went very still. "Celeste, hear me out. The hotel has employee housing, studio apartments, nothing fancy, but they're clean and safe and affordable. You could bring Hannah there and enroll her in the local school. We offer health care after 90 days, paid vacation after 6 months, education reimbursement if you want to take trade classes or get certified in something. It's a real chance, Ryan. A real fresh start." She could see him struggling, emotions warring across his face, hope battling pride, desperation fighting dignity. "What is it?" she asked gently. "Talk to me." Ryan stared out the window at the passing scenery. They were getting close to Scottsdale now, the city sprawling across the valley in a grid of lights and glass and concrete, so different from the empty desert they'd crossed together. "Why are you doing this?" he asked finally, voice rough. "Really? Because a few hours ago you didn't know I existed, and now you're offering me a job, housing, a whole new life. People don't do that, not for strangers." Celeste understood the suspicion. She'd be suspicious too if the situation were reversed. Trust was a luxury when you'd been knocked down enough times. "You want the honest answer?" she asked. "Always. 3 hours ago I was driving down that highway feeling like I was suffocating in my own life, like I'd lost the plot completely, like I'd become this thing I didn't recognize. Rich, successful, and absolutely miserable. I was going through the motions day after day, wondering what the point of it all was." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "And then I saw you walking, with your head up and your shoulders back, carrying everything you owned like it weighed nothing, moving forward even though you had every reason to sit down and quit. And something in me just cracked open, like a shell I didn't even know I was living in suddenly broke. I don't understand. You reminded me that there are people in this world who don't give up, who keep walking even when the road is hard, who choose dignity over defeat." Celeste's voice cracked. "You reminded me of my father. Of the man he was before the empire, before the success, when he was just someone trying to make something of himself. And you reminded me why I inherited this business in the first place. Not to make money, but to help people, to create opportunities, to be the person who pulls over." Fresh tears streamed down her face and she didn't bother to hide them. "So maybe I'm being selfish, maybe I need you to take this job as much as you need it. Because if I can help one person the way Joe Martinez helped my father, if I can actually make a difference instead of just managing spreadsheets and attending board meetings, maybe I can figure out what the hell I'm supposed to be doing with this life." Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he extended his hand across the console. "Okay, I'll take the job, but on one condition." She took his hand, his grip firm and warm and real. "What's that?" "That we're honest with each other. No boss-employee nonsense where you pretend everything's fine and I pretend not to notice. You need someone to tell you when you're drowning in your fancy life, I'll tell you. I need someone to kick my ass when I'm being too proud to ask for help. You kick it. We're real with each other. Deal? Celeste felt more tears sliding down her cheeks, but she was smiling too. Deal. They finished the drive to Scottsdale in a different kind of silence than before. Not awkward or uncomfortable, but companionable. The silence of two people who'd found something unexpected in each other. Not romance, but something potentially more valuable. Genuine friendship. As they entered the city, reality began settling back in. This was her territory now. Her world of glass towers and manicured lawns and people who knew her name. The weight of it pressed down on her shoulders, familiar and oppressive. You nervous? She asked Ryan as she navigated through evening traffic toward the Melbrook Scottsdale. Terrified, he admitted, looking out at the expensive cars and upscale shopping centers. But the good kind of terrified, the kind that means something's about to change. Yeah, Celeste agreed. I know that feeling. The hotel rose before them as they turned onto its private drive, a stunning structure of blue glass and golden accents catching the last rays of sunset. 8 stories of luxury rising from perfectly landscaped grounds. The Melbrook signature, her father's vision made real. Celeste had seen it 1,000 times, but tonight she tried to see it through Ryan's eyes. The valet station where young men in crisp uniforms opened doors and offered warm towels. The circular fountain with water dancing in choreographed patterns. The entrance canopy made of hand-forged copper that had cost more than Ryan probably made in 5 years. Cars in guest parking were all luxury models. Mercedes, BMW, Lexus, Tesla. Guests in designer clothes moved through the revolving doors, pulling expensive luggage behind them. This was a world of wealth and privilege and casual elegance, and Ryan was about to become part of it, but from the other side. The side that cleaned the rooms, fixed the leaks, kept everything running smoothly so the guests could enjoy their stays without ever thinking about the people who made it possible. Pretty fancy, Ryan said quietly. Too fancy sometimes. My father always said luxury shouldn't be intimidating. It should be welcoming. Celeste pulled around to the employee entrance and back, away from the glitz and glamour. Back here, things were more utilitarian. Service vehicles, delivery trucks, staff in practical uniforms coming and going. Ryan grabbed his duffel from the trunk, standing for a moment just looking at the building. She could see him processing it all. The size, the scope, the reality of what he was stepping into. Thank you, he said, turning to her. For pulling over, for the meal, for the chance, for seeing something in me worth helping. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Celeste pulled a business card from her wallet and wrote her personal cell number on the back with a pen from her purse. That's my direct line. You need anything, and I mean anything. Help with housing, questions about the job, someone to talk to, you call me, okay? Okay. He pocketed the card carefully. And Celeste? You ever need someone to just talk to? Someone who won't judge you or want something from you. Someone who will be honest even when it's hard to hear. You call me too. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They walked into the employee entrance together, footsteps echoing in the service corridor. The back of house was clean but plain. Concrete floors, industrial lighting, no pretense. This was where the real work happened, away from guest eyes. Patricia Chen's office was down a hallway marked Administration. Celeste knocked on the door, and a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s looked up from her computer. Ms. Davenport, Patricia said, surprise evident as she stood. I wasn't expecting you. Thought you had that Dubai meeting today. Change of plans. Celeste gestured to Ryan. Patricia Chen, meet Ryan Walker. Ryan, this is Patricia, our director of operations here. Best in the business. Patricia's eyes flicked between them, taking in Celeste's wind-blown hair, casual outfit so unlike her usual power suits, the dusty stranger in faded jeans. Years of experience had taught her not to ask questions she didn't need answers to. Nice to meet you, Mr. Walker, she said, shaking his hand. Just Ryan, please. Patricia, Ryan is starting in maintenance tomorrow. I'd like you to get him set up with HR. Full benefits package, employee housing, the works. He's got extensive experience in building maintenance, plumbing, electrical, HVS. We'd be lucky to have him on the team. If Patricia was surprised by this unorthodox hiring process, she didn't show it. Of course, I'll handle everything personally. She turned to Ryan. You got your social security card, ID? In my bag, and my resume if you need it. We'll get copies of everything for your file. Patricia pulled out a tablet, already pulling up forms. Let's start with the basics. As Patricia began the intake process, Celeste stood to the side watching. This was real. She'd really done this. Picked up a stranger and changed his life. Changed her own life too, maybe. 20 minutes later, Ryan had filled out a mountain of paperwork, provided his documents, and been assigned a studio apartment in the employee housing complex, 2 blocks from the hotel. Patricia handed him a folder with his paperwork, an orientation schedule, and keys to his new home. "You start Monday morning 7 a.m., Patricia said. "Gives you the weekend to get settled, maybe pick up some basics you'll need. Apartment's furnished, bed, couch, table, kitchenette, linens and dishes in the closets. Not fancy, but functional." "It's perfect," Ryan said, and meant it. "Thank you." "Don't thank me, thank Ms. Davenport. This kind of direct hire doesn't usually happen." "I know." Patricia left to make copies of his documents, leaving Celeste and Ryan alone in the office. "So this is it," Ryan said. "New job, new home, new start. How does it feel?" "Surreal. Like I'm going to wake up back on that highway, and this will all have been a heat-induced hallucination." Celeste laughed. "Trust me, it's real. I'll prove it. Let me walk you to your apartment, make sure you can find everything." They walked through the warm evening air to the employee housing complex. It was a modest, 3-story building, well-maintained but unadorned. Not luxury, but solid, safe, clean. Exactly what Ryan needed. His apartment was on the 2nd floor, number 214. Celeste watched as he unlocked the door, stepped inside, and just stood there taking it in. It was small, maybe 500 square feet total, but it was clean and bright, with tile floors and white walls and a large window letting in the last golden light of day. A queen bed in one corner, a small couch facing a wall-mounted TV, a kitchenette with a 2-burner stove, mini fridge, and microwave, a bathroom with a shower tub combo, a closet for clothes. Not much, but everything. Ryan set his duffel down slowly, reverently, like placing something sacred on an altar. Then he turned to Celeste, and she saw tears in his eyes. "I've got a place for Hannah," he said, voice breaking. "I can bring my daughter home." Celeste's own eyes filled. "Yeah, you can. I can call my sister tonight and tell her we're okay, that I found work, that we'll have a real home." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "Jesus. This morning I was walking down that highway with no plan beyond putting one foot in front of the other. And now you're going to be okay," Celeste finished. He crossed the room and pulled her into a hug. It was sudden and impulsive and completely appropriate all at once. She hugged him back. This stranger who wasn't a stranger anymore. This friend she'd found on an empty desert highway. "Thank you," Ryan whispered. "Thank you for pulling over." "Thank you," Celeste whispered back, "for reminding me why any of this matters." When they pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. "I should let you settle in," Celeste said, heading for the door. "Call me if you need anything, really, any time." "I will." "And Celeste?" She turned back. "You're going to figure it out. Whatever you're looking for, whatever you're trying to find, I can tell. You're exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, even if it doesn't feel like it yet." She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. "So are you, Ryan. So are you." Celeste drove home to her mansion as the sun set in shades of pink and orange and gold. The same house, the same silence, the same emptiness. But somehow it didn't feel quite so crushing anymore. Because she had done something today. Something real. Something her father would have done. She'd pulled over. That night, alone in her vast house, Celeste pulled out her laptop and started drafting a proposal for the board. A new initiative, employee advancement programs, partnerships with local trade schools, mentorship opportunities, emergency assistance funds for staff in crisis, ways to invest in people, not just properties, ways to remember what hospitality actually meant. It was a small start, but it was a start. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, but she knew who it was. "Got the apartment all set up, called my sister. Hannah cried when I told her we'd have our own place. She wants to know if there's room for her stuffed animals." "There is. Thank you again for everything. This is the best day I've had in years." "Ryan," Celeste smiled, typing back, "told you I had a good feeling about this. See you Monday. And yes, there's always room for stuffed animals. See." 3 dots appeared then. "Looking forward to it. And Celeste, you'll find what you're looking for. I can tell." She stared at those words for a long time before responding. "So will you, Ryan. So will you." Celeste set down her phone and walked to the window, looking out over the glittering lights of Scottsdale. Somewhere out there, in a modest studio apartment behind a luxury hotel, A man was probably video calling his daughter to show her their new home, to tell her things were going to be okay, that they'd be together soon, that her dad had kept his promise to make things better, and in her mansion on the hill, a woman who'd forgotten how to feel anything was smiling through tears, feeling something crack open inside her chest, something that had been locked away for too long. Hope, purpose, connection. Two strangers had met on a desert highway, and somehow, impossibly, they'd both found exactly what they needed, a second chance, not at romance or rescue, but at something more fundamental, at being human, at remembering that the greatest luxury isn't wealth or success or power. It's the simple act of helping another person find their way home. Gerald Davenport had walked into Phoenix with nothing and been given a ride by a stranger named Joe Martinez. He'd never forgotten that kindness, had built an empire on the foundation of that simple act of grace. And today, 30 years later, his daughter had finally understood what he'd been trying to teach her all along. Sometimes all it takes to change everything is one person who decides to pull over. 3 months later, the Melbrook Scottsdale was running smoother than it had in years. Patricia Chen had her theories. "It's that new maintenance guy," she told Celeste during their weekly operations meeting. "Ryan Walker, best hire we've made in a decade. He doesn't just fix things, he anticipates problems before they happen. Last week he noticed a slight vibration in the HVAC system nobody else heard, caught a bearing failure before it could shut down cooling during our busiest season." Celeste tried to keep her expression neutral, professional. "That's good to hear." "Good? It's exceptional. And the housekeeping staff loves him. He fixes their carts without being asked, helps them move heavy furniture, treats them with genuine respect. Half the team has asked if we can clone him." Patricia smiled. "Whatever instinct made you hire him, trust it more often." What Patricia didn't know, what nobody knew except Celeste and Ryan, was that they met for coffee every Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. in the hotel's employee cafeteria, before the breakfast rush started. Those meetings had become the highlight of Celeste's week, more valuable than any board meeting, more honest than any investor call. "How's Hannah settling in?" Celeste asked at their Tuesday meeting in late September, watching Ryan's face light up the way it always did when his daughter was mentioned. "She loves her new school. Made friends with a girl named Sophia who lives in the building next to ours. They draw together every afternoon. Castles and dragons and astronaut princesses." Ryan pulled out his phone, showing Celeste a photo of Hannah and Sophia, both blonde and gap-toothed, holding up crayon masterpieces. "She asked me yesterday if we could stay here forever. In Scottsdale, in our apartment, said it feels like home." "What did you tell her?" "I told her yes, that we're staying, that this is home now." Ryan's voice thickened with emotion. "First time in her life I've been able to promise her that. First time I felt like I could actually keep the promise." Celeste reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm glad." Over the past 3 months their friendship had deepened. Ryan was honest in a way no one else in her life had ever been. When she complained about board meetings, he called her out. When she talked about selling the company, he asked hard questions. When she showed up exhausted, he made her laugh with Hannah's latest philosophical questions. Why do grown-ups worry so much? And Celeste had been there for Ryan too. When Hannah got sick, Celeste drove them to the best pediatrician. When his sister visited, Celeste comped her a suite. When Ryan wanted welding classes, Celeste covered the costs. They were real friends, the kind who showed up without keeping score. But there was something Ryan hadn't told her. Celeste could sense it, a shadow that crossed his face sometimes. "Ryan," she said carefully, setting down her coffee cup, "can I ask you something?" "Always." "That job you lost in Tucson, what really happened?" He went very still, coffee cup frozen halfway to his mouth. The employee cafeteria was quiet except for the industrial refrigerator's hum, the distant clatter of dishes being washed. For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he set down the cup with deliberate care and looked her straight in the eye. "I got arrested," he said quietly. Celeste's heart stuttered. "What?" "3 years ago. Working at that apartment complex trying to support Hannah. Bills were piling up. A guy offered me cash for a renovation project. I didn't ask enough questions." His voice cracked. "Turned out he was stripping copper from vacant buildings. When the cops showed up, I was there. Got arrested for theft." Celeste felt like the ground had dropped out. "Ryan, I didn't know, I swear. But the DA didn't believe me. I took a plea deal. 6 months suspended, 2 years probation, full restitution. It kept me out of jail but gave me a record." Fresh tears streamed down his face. "That's why I couldn't find work. Why I was walking that highway I applied to 50 places, everyone turned me down. I had my record expunged 2 months before I met you, he continued. Finished probation early, paid every penny back. By the time you ran that background check legally, it had never happened. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was terrified you'd see me differently. Because you're the best friend I've had and I couldn't stand losing you. The employee cafeteria felt too small. Celeste stood and pulled Ryan into a fierce hug. You're not losing me, she said. You hear me? He hugged her back, shaking with sobs. Years of fear and shame pouring out. I understand why you didn't tell me. And Ryan? She pulled back. What happened wasn't fair. You paid for your mistake. You've spent every day since proving who you really are. Your past doesn't define you. Your character does. Thank you. They sat back down, coffee cold now, but neither caring. There's something else, Ryan said after a moment. Something I've been wanting to ask you. What is it? That employee initiative you've been working on. The advancement programs, the partnerships with trade schools. I've been thinking about it. And I wonder if maybe I could help. Celeste leaned forward, interested. How? I know what it's like to be overlooked. People with records, people who've made mistakes, they're not less capable. They just need someone to give them a chance. His eyes brightened with intensity. What if we created a program specifically for people with barriers to employment? We could partner with re-entry programs, shelters, veterans organizations, offer training, mentorship, a real path forward. Celeste felt something ignite. Keep going. We'd be honest, not hiding their pasts, but not defining them by it. We'd say, you made mistakes. You've paid. Here's your second chance. Ryan, that's brilliant. You really think the board would go for it? I don't care. I'm the CEO. I decide what this company stands for. She met his eyes. And I decide we stand for second chances. Over the next month, they built the program together. Celeste handled budgets, legal requirements, partnerships. Ryan designed the program, screening criteria, training curriculum, mentorship structure. They called it the Desert Rose Initiative, after Gerald Davenport's first motel. The board pushed back. Too risky. Bad for the brand. But Celeste stood firm. My father built this company on one stranger's kindness, she told the board. Joe Martinez gave him a chance when everyone else drove past. Everything we have exists because someone decided my father was worth helping. This initiative honors that legacy. We're doing it. The vote was close. Some board members saw vision, others saw risk. But it passed. On a cold December morning, 6 months after she'd picked up a stranger on a desert highway, Celeste stood in the Melbrock's conference room with Ryan and 5 new hires, the first graduates of the Desert Rose Initiative. Maria had been homeless for 2 years. Deshaun aged out of foster care with nowhere to go. James struggled with PTSD and addiction after serving in Afghanistan. Keisha had been incarcerated for a nonviolent drug offense. Tom lost everything in medical bankruptcy when his son got cancer. All of them had been turned away by dozens of employers. All of them had been told they weren't worth the risk. Celeste looked at their nervous, hopeful faces and saw Ryan 6 months ago. Saw her father 30 years ago. Saw herself before she'd remembered what it meant to be human. Welcome to the Melbrock family, she said, voice thick with emotion. You're here because you've earned this chance. Because you've shown resilience and determination. Because we believe in second chances and the dignity of honest work. We're investing in you, and we know you're going to prove us right. After orientation, Celeste found Ryan in the lobby, staring up at the blue and gold signature. You okay? Yeah. He smiled and it reached his eyes. I was just thinking about that day on the highway. How close I came to giving up. How if you hadn't pulled over. He shook his head. Everything would be different. Our lives would both be different. Celeste corrected. You saved me too. You reminded me why any of this matters. Hannah burst through the doors right on schedule. Sarah had been dropping her off after school so she could spend time with Ryan during his break. At 7.5, she was all blonde energy and unstoppable joy. Dad, Celeste. She hugged them both. Sophia and I built the best blanket fort today. Can we show you, please? Maybe tomorrow, sweetheart, Ryan said, ruffling her hair. I've got to get back to work. But Celeste's the boss. She can give you time off. Celeste laughed. He's right, though. We all have work to do. But I'll come see your fort this weekend. Deal? Deal. As Ryan and Hannah headed toward the employee exit, Hannah chattering about her day, Celeste felt her phone buzz. A text from Patricia. Board just approved expansion of the Desert Rose Initiative to all 15 properties. They want to make it a company-wide program. What did you do to them? Celeste smiled and typed back. I reminded them what we're actually in business for. She walked to her office, not the big CEO suite on the top floor, but a smaller office she'd taken on the ground floor, closer to the staff, closer to the actual work of hospitality. The walls were decorated with photos, her father standing in front of the original Desert Rose, Ryan and Hannah on moving day, the first Desert Rose graduates in their new uniforms, and there, in a frame on her desk, was the photo that meant the most, taken by a hotel guest who'd caught the moment when Celeste and Ryan were standing by the employee entrance, both laughing at something Hannah had said. Just 3 people, 3 broken people who'd found each other and become whole. Celeste sat down at her desk and opened her laptop. She had work to do, real work, work that mattered, work that would help people the way Joe Martinez had helped her father, the way she'd helped Ryan, the way Ryan had helped her. Outside her window, the Arizona sun was setting in shades of gold and amber, painting the desert in colors that promised tomorrow would come. And for the first time in 3 years, Celeste Davenport looked at that sunset and felt something she'd thought she'd lost forever. She felt hope. The kind of hope that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're supposed to do. The kind that comes from true friendship, from second chances given and received, from remembering that sometimes all it takes to change everything is one person who decides to pull over.